I whispered, "I never actually loved you. Not even at the start," to Michael during our vow renewal. And honestly, the look on his face made it all worth it. I'm Samantha, 32, and I've spent 8 years pretending to be the perfect wife while slowly dying inside. We met when I was clawing my way up at work, putting in 60-hour weeks trying to get noticed by upper management. Michael was convenient, stable job in property management, decent looks, and most importantly, he worshipped the ground I walked on. Between us, I settled. I knew it then, and I definitely know it now. Our wedding was this huge production my mom insisted on. Everyone kept saying what a perfect couple we were. If they only knew how I'd roll my eyes behind Michael's back when he'd ramble about boring work stuff. I still remember my maid of honor, Paige, whispering, "Are you sure about this?" right before I walked down the aisle. I just smiled and said, "He's a good guy." Which wasn't a lie. But good doesn't mean exciting or ambitious or worthy of someone like me. The first few years weren't terrible. Michael's income meant I could take risks at work, like turning down that lateral move that would have meant more money but less visibility. I made it sound like I was making sacrifices for our future, but really I was just using the financial cushion he provided, and he ate it up. Everything changed when Thaddeus joined our department 3 years ago. Now that was a man with ambition. We started having working lunches, which turned into drinks after work. Nothing physical happened, well, not much anyway, but the connection was intense. Michael never suspected a thing. Even when I'd come home late smelling like whiskey and designer cologne, he'd just heat up my dinner and ask about my day like some trained puppy. In public, I was the supportive, loving wife. I'd touch Michael's arm at company parties, laugh at his lame jokes, post anniversary tributes on social media with captions like, "So blessed to do life with my best friend." Gag me. But behind closed doors, I couldn't hide my disappointment. Really? That's all they're offering for the promotion? Did you even try to negotiate? I'd ask, knowing it would make him feel small. The vow renewal was actually Michael's idea for our 8th anniversary. Some romantic gesture to recommit to us when he sensed I was pulling away. He spent months planning it, which should have been my first clue he suspected something. The ceremony was smaller than our wedding, but still elegant. Backyard garden party, fairy lights, closest friends and family. Michael wrote these vows that had everyone in tears, going on about how marrying me was the best decision he ever made. When it was my turn, I recited the generic vows I'd found online the night before. After, during our first dance, Michael pulled me close and whispered, "I've never loved anyone the way I love you." Something in me just snapped. Maybe it was the 3rd glass of champagne. Or maybe it was 8 years of pretending to be someone I wasn't. Before I could stop myself, I whispered back, "I never actually loved you. Not even at the start." His arms stiffened around me. The song kept playing, but Michael's face, God, his face. It wasn't anger or even shock. It was this slow dawning understanding, like he'd always known but had been lying to himself. For a split second, I almost felt bad. Almost. Instead, I felt this rush of power, like I finally said the thing I'd been thinking for years, and the world hadn't ended. Our guests didn't notice anything wrong. I've always been good at keeping up appearances. But that night, Michael slept in the guest room. When I saw his face the next morning, hollow-eyed and pale, I had the weirdest feeling that I'd finally met the real Michael. Someone who saw right through me. Someone who might actually be a worthy opponent. The weeks after our vow renewal were different, like we were playing this weird chess game where neither of us acknowledged the board. Michael stopped asking about my day or telling me about his. He'd come home from work, fix himself a drink, and disappear into his home office until bedtime. At first, I let him have his little tantrum. Men are so emotional, right? But by week 3, his silence was getting under my skin. We were at dinner with our friends Paxton and Colette when Colette asked how our second honeymoon phase was going after the vow renewal. Before I could spin some cute story, Michael looked right at her and said, "Actually, I think Samantha and I are finally seeing each other clearly for the first time." Then he smiled at me like we were sharing some inside joke. I wanted to slap that smug look off his face. I started spending more time with Thaddeus, not even bothering to hide it anymore. Working late became our code for drinks or dinner. He'd tell me how underappreciated I was, how someone with my talent should be a director by now, how Michael was clearly holding me back. And yeah, things crossed the line, in his car one night at the office after everyone left. Once in a hotel when I told Michael I was at a conference. I didn't feel guilty. Meanwhile, Michael was changing in ways that made me nervous. He started going to the gym, meeting friends for drinks without telling me where he was going. Once I checked his phone while he was in the shower and found texts from someone named Ren. Nothing explicit, just making plans to meet up. When I casually asked who Ren was over breakfast, he just said, "A friend from college," and went back to his coffee. When Michael started questioning our finances, things really heated up. He noticed withdrawals from our joint account, gifts I'd bought for Thaddeus, weekend trips, nice dinners. The next day, I discovered he'd removed half the money from our savings account. When I called him, furious, he calmly said he'd opened his own account to protect his assets, like I was some kind of criminal. I screamed at him about trust and marriage being a partnership. He listened quietly before saying, "That's rich coming from you, Sam. By the way, how's Thaddeus these days?" Then he hung up. That's when I realized Michael wasn't just hurt. He was preparing for war. A company retreat in Aspen became the breaking point. Michael rarely attended these work events. But this time, he surprised me by accepting the +1 invitation. The first night went smoothly enough. Michael charmed everyone with his knowledge of wine and made my boss laugh with some story about a property disaster that actually came off as entertaining. Day 2 was when everything fell apart. I was supposed to meet Thaddeus in the hotel restaurant for breakfast prep before our presentation. When I got there, Michael was sitting with Thaddeus, both nursing coffees like old friends. The look on Thaddeus's face, pure deer in headlights. "Hope you don't mind," Michael said casually. "I ran into Thaddeus in the lobby and thought I'd join your breakfast meeting. I'd love to see how you two work together." The way he emphasized work made my stomach drop. He knew. Later that day, Michael sat front row during my presentation with Thaddeus. We were pitching a new marketing strategy to the executive team, something we'd worked on for months. But Thaddeus kept fumbling his parts, forgetting transition points we'd rehearsed dozens of times. Every time I glanced at Michael, he was watching us with this calm intensity that made me want to scream. That night at the gala dinner, Michael was downright charming with my colleagues. When he went to get us drinks, my boss's wife leaned over and said, "You're so lucky. Michael is utterly devoted to you." I smiled tightly and excused myself to the bathroom, where I texted Thaddeus, "Meet me on the terrace in 5. I waited 15 minutes. He never showed. Instead, Michael found me, 2 fresh drinks in hand. "Looking for someone?" he asked, passing me a gin and tonic. Before I could answer, he added, "Thaddeus left. Apparently, he got a call that his position is being reconsidered after today's presentation. Shame." On the flight home, he finally addressed the elephant in the room. "I know about you and Thaddeus," he said quietly. "I've known for months. I could have denied it. Instead, I went on the offense. Well, if you were more exciting, more ambitious, more anything, maybe I wouldn't have needed to look elsewhere," I whispered, shouted. "You drove me to this with your mediocrity, Michael." I expected him to crumble, to beg for another chance like he always had before. Instead, he just looked at me with something like pity. "I used to think you were out of my league, Sam. Now I realize we're not even playing the same sport." Then he put his headphones on and closed his eyes, ending the conversation. When we got home, Michael moved into the guest room permanently. I tried every trick that had worked before, crying about how lonely I felt, hinting that maybe we should try for a baby, even attempting to seduce him. Nothing worked. So, I did what any rational person would do. I decided to destroy his life. Michael's big presentation for the partnership committee was scheduled for the following month. I started small, hiding his notes, accidentally deleting files from the shared home computer, but he'd backed everything up. So I escalated. I knew the senior partner's wife, Claudia, from various company functions. I called her for coffee and casually mentioned my concerns about Michael's drinking problem. "It's been getting worse," I said, eyes welling with practiced tears. I'd never normally say anything, but we all know how stressful a partnership role can be. "I'm just worried about him." Claudia patted my hand and promised to mention it to her husband in confidence. Mission accomplished. Despite my sabotage, Michael got the promotion. I should have been happy, more money, more status for us. But it didn't feel like my victory. He didn't even call to tell me. I found out from a colleague's congratulatory email to the department. That night, we had dinner reservations at Paxton and Colette's to celebrate their anniversary. I dressed to kill, the red dress Michael once said he loved, hair blown out, full makeup. Michael arrived separately, claiming he'd be coming straight from work. When he arrived, he brought an expensive bottle of wine and flowers for Colette, but nothing for me. After dinner, while Paxton was giving Michael a tour of their renovated garage, Colette and I cleared dishes in the kitchen. She was asking about our vow renewal when Michael's phone buzzed on the counter with a text from Ren, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. My place at 7. I held up the phone to Colette. "See, this is what I've been dealing with. He's been cheating on me." Colette looked uncomfortable. "Sam, maybe you shouldn't read his messages." "Oh, please." I laughed bitterly. "Like you wouldn't if you thought Paxton was stepping out. Michael's been distant for months, staying at hotels, constantly texting this woman." Connect the dots. I needed Colette on my side. I was building up a good head of steam when I realized Colette was looking past me. Michael and Paxton were standing in the doorway. "Samantha," Michael said evenly. "It's time to go." The drive home was silent until we pulled into our driveway. Then Michael turned to me. "Ren is my therapist. I've been seeing her weekly to deal with the aftermath of our marriage." Inside, I found him packing a bag. "What are you doing?" I demanded. Michael didn't even look up. "I'm staying at a hotel tonight. Tomorrow, I'm seeing a lawyer." "This marriage is over, Sam." "Because I read your text?" "That's a bit dramatic," I scoffed, trying to regain control of the situation. He finally met my eyes. "No. Because I just watched you try to convince our friends I'm cheating on you to cover for your own affair. Because you tried to sabotage my career when your manipulation stopped working. Because you told me you never loved me. And the sad thing is, I think that's the only honest thing you've said in years." I didn't believe Michael would actually leave. Men like him don't walk away from 8 years of marriage without a fight. But the next morning, I woke up to divorce papers on the kitchen counter and a note, "My lawyer will contact yours." No, I'm sorry it came to this. No, maybe we can work it out. Just the cold, hard facts. I called in sick to work and spent the day planning my comeback. I needed to get ahead of this narrative before he turned everyone against me. I scheduled a lunch with my boss, spinning a story about Michael's controlling behavior and how I feared workplace retaliation now that we were separating. Next, I called our close friends one by one. With some, I went with the wronged wife angle. With others, I hinted at Michael's anger issues that had finally pushed me to suggest a separation for my own well-being. On social media, I didn't announce the separation right away. That would seem desperate. Instead, I posted a throwback photo from our honeymoon with a cryptic caption about life's unexpected turns. Then, I shared a quote about finding strength in difficult times. The comment section flooded with supportive messages, most assuming Michael had done something unforgivable. When I returned to work, colleagues brought me coffee, offered to cover my meetings, gave me understanding nods in the hallway. Meanwhile, Michael was being cut out of office lunch invitations despite his new partner status. It felt like victory. Then came the company spring gala. I'd been dreading it, my first official appearance post-separation. I spent a fortune on a new dress, got my hair professionally styled, prepared myself to face Michael and all the whispers. What I wasn't prepared for was Michael bringing a date. Not just any date. Colette. Our friend Colette. Paxton's wife. They walked in together, not touching, not romantic, but clearly together. The room went silent as people processed this development. Paxton entered a moment later, also seemingly unbothered by this arrangement. Colette approached me at the bar. "I wanted to tell you directly," she said quietly. "Paxton and I separated 3 months ago. We kept it private while working things out. Michael's been a good friend to both of us during this time." My mind raced. "So what? You're dating my husband now while we're still technically married?" I hissed. "No, Sam. We're just friends. I'm here supporting him because he told me how nervous he was about tonight." She lowered her voice. "But I think you should know, people are starting to compare notes about the different stories you've been telling." The 9 a.m. meeting with my boss the next morning was brief and devastating. Thaddeus had resigned, but not before documenting our relationship and submitting emails where I'd shared confidential company information with him. The company wasn't firing me. The HR nightmare wouldn't be worth it. But I was being demoted and transferred to the Houston office. Take it or leave it. 2 weeks later, as I packed for Houston, I decided to make one last play. I texted Michael asking to meet for coffee to finalize some details in person. To my surprise, he agreed. Michael arrived looking better than he had any right to, rested, focused, wearing a new shirt I didn't recognize. I'd spent an hour on my appearance, hoping to remind him of what he was losing, but he barely seemed to notice. "Thank you for meeting," I said, suddenly uncertain. "I wanted to talk about the house. Make sure you were being fair about the valuation." Michael nodded. "The appraisal is in the folder my lawyer sent. It's actually above market rate." "That's not really why I asked you here," I admitted. "I wanted to understand how things got so bad between us." "You told me you never loved me," he said quietly. "Not even at the start." I was angry, I backpedaled. "People say things they don't mean when they're hurt." Michael studied me. "What were you hurt about, Sam? What had I done to hurt you at that moment when everything was supposed to be perfect?" I didn't have an answer that wouldn't reveal more truth than I was comfortable with, so I redirected. "I heard you've been spending a lot of time with Colette. She's a friend going through a difficult time. Like I was. Are you sleeping with her?" I asked bluntly. Michael sighed. "No. But it wouldn't be your business if I was. We're getting divorced, remember? Because you gave up on us," I said, voice rising slightly. "I gave up?" Michael's composure cracked slightly. "You cheated, lied, manipulated me, tried to destroy my career, and told me you never loved me. What exactly was I supposed to be fighting for?" I felt tears coming. Real ones this time. "I'm moving to Houston," I said, letting my voice break, starting over completely. "Don't you feel anything about that? About me leaving?" Michael was quiet for a long moment. "I feel relieved," he finally said. "For both of us. You never wanted the life we had, Sam. Maybe now you can build one you actually want." Then he walked out, not looking back once, leaving me alone with the realization that he really was done. No dramatic final confrontation. No passionate last-minute reconciliation. Just over. Houston was supposed to be my fresh start. New city, new role, new apartment in one of those luxury mid-rises with a rooftop pool and fitness center. I told myself this was an upgrade. This was the sophisticated, independent life I'd always wanted. The reality was a sterile one-bedroom that echoed with emptiness. A demotion so significant I was now reporting to someone 5 years my junior. Colleagues who'd been warned about me before I arrived. Their polite smiles never reaching their eyes. After one particularly disastrous date with a guy who spent 2 hours talking about his cryptocurrency investments, I came home and found myself scrolling through Michael's social media. His profile hadn't changed much. Still minimal posting, mostly work-related, no relationship status updated. But then I clicked on a photo he was tagged in from a firm event. And there she was, Colette, standing next to him, looking up at him with obvious affection while he smiled down at her. They weren't touching, weren't posed as a couple, but anyone with eyes could see it. They were together. I did what any rational person would do. I created a fake profile and sent Colette a direct message. "Just for your information, Michael Reynolds has herpes. His ex-wife, my close friend, Wanted you to know. The next morning, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Is this Samantha Reynolds? A woman's voice asked. Yes. Who's this? My name is Julia Winters. I'm an attorney representing Colette Harlow in a defamation case. We've traced several harassing messages to your IP address and phone number. That evening, I got an email from HR requesting a meeting the following morning. The meeting confirmed my worst fears. 3 months in Houston and my numbers were abysmal. I was being put on a performance improvement plan with monthly reviews. If things didn't turn around in 90 days, I'd be let go. I chose to focus on work and move on, for about 12 hours. The next morning, I got an email notification that Michael had updated his relationship status, in a relationship with Colette Harlow. The post was flooded with congratulatory comments, including ones from people who had been at our wedding. Something in me snapped. I called in sick to work, booked a flight back home for that weekend, and spent the day planning. If Michael thought he could just replace me and live happily ever after with Colette, he had another thing coming. Sunday morning, I positioned myself at a cafe across from their favorite brunch spot. Sure enough, at 10:30, they appeared, walking hand in hand toward the restaurant. I waited until they were seated on the patio, then made my move. Seriously, I said loudly. You couldn't even wait until the divorce was final. Their reactions were infuriatingly different from what I'd expected. They both just looked tired, like they'd been expecting this and were resigned to dealing with it. Sam, Michael said quietly. Please don't make a scene. Colette excused herself, and Michael sat back down. Nothing happened between us until months after you left, he said. Not that it's any of your business. We're getting divorced, remember? Your choice, not mine. I want you to admit you moved on to Colette too fast, I said. That all your talk about commitment and vows was just talk. Michael looked at me for a long moment. Is that really why you flew back here? To police the timeline of when I started dating again? He shook his head. This isn't healthy, Sam. I felt tears threatening. So that's it? 8 years together and you've just moved on like I never existed. No, Sam. I haven't forgotten our 8 years. I've just finally accepted them for what they were. He reached for his wallet, dropped cash on the table. I need to go. Please don't contact Colette again. The restraining order is still an option. I returned to Houston that night, depleted and humiliated. My phone was full of missed calls from work, and I didn't have a job to return to. On Monday, my access card didn't work when I reached the office. Security called my boss, who came down to personally deliver the news. I was being terminated effective immediately. The next few months were a blur of unemployment, failed job interviews, and mounting debt. Word had spread in my industry. No one wanted to hire the unstable woman who'd melted down after her divorce. I had to downsize to an even smaller apartment in a neighborhood where I didn't feel safe walking alone at night. 6 months after our confrontation, I saw the announcement on social media. Michael and Colette were engaged. The post had thousands of likes, hundreds of comments celebrating their beautiful journey from friendship to love. What broke me wasn't their happiness. It was the timing. The announcement came exactly 1 year after I'd whispered those fatal words to Michael at our vow renewal. He had chosen this date deliberately. It wasn't just that he'd moved on. He wanted to redeem the day I'd destroyed. To replace the bad memory with a good one. The worst part? For the first time, I couldn't blame anyone but myself. I'd never loved Michael the way he deserved. I'd cheated, lied, manipulated, and sabotaged. I'd thought I was too good for him, but he was the one who'd outgrown me. I'd like to say this realization changed me, that I had some profound awakening and became a better person. But that would be another lie. And I've told enough of those. The truth is, I'm still bitter. Still convinced that somehow I got a raw deal. Still thinking that if things had gone differently, I'd be the one celebrating a new engagement while Michael pinned for me from afar. Some people just don't learn, I guess. Even when the universe hands them the perfect opportunity to see themselves clearly, they choose self-deception. That's me, Samantha. The woman who had everything and threw it away because she thought she deserved more. The The woman who whispered, "I never actually loved you,"